15. Poorest African countries in 2025. Africa, a continent rich in diversity and culture, is home to some of the world's poorest countries. These nations face a complex tapestry of challenges, including political instability, economic hardship, and environmental crises. Despite their struggles, they exhibit remarkable resilience and creativity, often finding innovative ways to cope with adversity. Factors such as colonial legacies, resource mismanagement, and climate change have exacerbated poverty levels, leaving millions without access to basic necessities. In this video, we shall explore the 15 poorest countries in Africa, and we shall be using the GDP per capita as our measure. But before we proceed, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future videos. 15th. Mali. GDP per capita, $912. Mali is one of the poorest countries in the world, with a significant portion of its population living on less than $1.90 a day. Factors contributing to its low standard of living include limited access to education, healthcare, and clean water. The economy is primarily agrarian, reliant on subsistence farming, and vulnerable to climate change, leading to food insecurity. Political instability and conflict have further exacerbated economic challenges, disrupting livelihoods and displacing communities. In rural areas, infrastructure is often inadequate, hindering access to markets and essential services. Malnutrition rates are high, and life expectancy is low compared to global averages, reflecting the pressing need for development and humanitarian aid to improve living conditions in Mali. 14. Burkina Faso. GDP per capita, $888. Burkina Faso, a landlocked country in West Africa, faces significant challenges, including political instability, poverty, and security threats from extremist groups. The nation has experienced multiple coups, with the latest in January 2022 bringing a new president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, to power. Traoré has pledged to address pressing issues such as security, economic development, and social cohesion. His administration aims to restore stability by engaging communities and strengthening the military to combat terrorism. Additionally, he emphasizes the importance of education and infrastructure development to improve living conditions. While the path ahead is fraught with difficulties, Traoré's commitment to reform offers a glimmer of hope for a brighter future for the people of Burkina Faso. 13. Sierra Leone. GDP per capita, $856. Sierra Leone has one of the highest poverty rates in the world, with over 50% of its population living below the national poverty line. The country struggles financially due to a legacy of civil war, which devastated infrastructure and disrupted economic activities. Additionally, widespread corruption and mismanagement of resources have hindered development efforts. The economy heavily relies on agriculture and mining, exposing it to fluctuations in global commodity prices. Limited access to education and healthcare further perpetuates the cycle of poverty, as many are unable to secure stable employment. Natural disasters, such as mudslides and flooding, also exacerbate vulnerabilities. Despite these challenges, the resilience of the Sierra Leonean people continues to shine through, with efforts underway to improve living conditions and promote sustainable development. 12th. Liberia. GDP per capita, $800. Liberia faces a significant poverty rate, with around 50% of its population living below the poverty line. The country is grappling with financial struggles due to the aftermath of a prolonged civil war that devastated its infrastructure and economy. High unemployment and reliance on subsistence agriculture leave many without stable income. Additionally, Liberia's economy is vulnerable to fluctuations in global commodity prices, particularly in rubber and gold, which impacts revenue generation. Corruption and weak governance further exacerbate economic challenges, hindering effective resource management. Limited access to quality education and healthcare perpetuates the cycle of poverty, preventing many from improving their circumstances. Despite these obstacles, there are ongoing efforts aimed at fostering economic growth and improving living conditions for Liberians. 11th. Somalia. GDP per capita, $775. Somalia has one of the highest poverty rates in the world, with nearly 70% of its population living below the poverty line. The country struggles financially due to decades of civil conflict, which has devastated infrastructure, disrupted livelihoods, and displaced millions. The ongoing instability hampers economic development, leaving many reliant on humanitarian aid. Agriculture, a primary source of income, is vulnerable to climate change and recurrent droughts, exacerbating food insecurity. Additionally, limited access to education and healthcare restricts opportunities for improvement. Corruption and weak governance further undermine efforts to rebuild the economy. Despite these challenges, the resilience of the Somali people shines through, with initiatives aimed at promoting peace and fostering economic recovery gaining momentum in some regions. 10. DRC, GDP per capita, $714. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, is endowed with immense natural resources, including vast mineral wealth like cobalt, copper, and diamonds. Despite this richness, it remains one of the poorest countries in the world, with over 70% of its population living in poverty. The paradox stems from a history of political instability, corruption, and conflict, which have hindered effective resource management and economic development. Wealth generated from resources often fails to benefit the local population, as profits are frequently siphoned off by corrupt officials and foreign corporations. Inadequate infrastructure, limited access to education and healthcare, and ongoing violence further exacerbate poverty. As a result, the DRC struggles to translate its natural abundance into tangible improvements in living standards for its citizens. 9. Chad, GDP per capita, $702. Chad faces a severe poverty situation, with approximately 42% of its population living below the national poverty line. The country struggles with economic challenges stemming from ongoing conflict, political instability, and climate change, which disrupt agriculture and livelihoods. Chad's economy heavily depends on oil, but fluctuations in global prices and inadequate infrastructure hinder growth. Additionally, limited access to education and healthcare perpetuates the cycle of poverty. Humanitarian crises, including food insecurity and displacement due to conflicts in neighboring regions, further exacerbate the difficulties faced by the Chadian people, making sustainable development a pressing challenge. 8. Mozambique, GDP per capita, $647. Mozambique has a significant poverty problem, with around 46% of the population living below the national poverty line. Despite post-Civil War recovery and economic growth driven by natural resources, including coal and natural gas, many citizens remain impoverished due to unequal wealth distribution. Agricultural dependency leaves many vulnerable to climate shocks and food insecurity. Inadequate infrastructure, limited access to education and healthcare, and high unemployment rates further exacerbate poverty levels. Additionally, ongoing challenges such as corruption and governance issues hinder effective development, making it difficult for the country to translate its economic potential into improved living conditions for its people. 7. CAR, GDP per capita, $639. The Central African Republic, CAR, has one of the highest poverty rates in the world, with approximately 70% of its population living below the poverty line. The country struggles financially due to prolonged political instability and conflict, which have devastated infrastructure and disrupted economic activities. Frequent violence and insecurity displace communities and hinder access to markets, education, and healthcare. The economy is heavily reliant on subsistence agriculture, leaving many vulnerable to food insecurity and climate shocks. Additionally, corruption and weak governance impede effective resource management and development efforts. Despite its rich natural resources, including diamonds and gold, the benefits often do not reach the local population, perpetuating the cycle of poverty and limiting opportunities for improvement. 6th, Sudan, GDP per capita, $633. Sudan faces a severe poverty crisis, with approximately 36% of its population living below the national poverty line. The country struggles financially due to decades of conflict, political instability, and economic mismanagement. The loss of oil revenues after South Sudan's independence in 2011 significantly weakened the economy, leading to hyperinflation and a devalued currency. Agriculture, the backbone of the economy, is constrained by outdated practices, land degradation, and insufficient infrastructure. Additionally, ongoing conflicts in various regions displace communities and disrupt livelihoods. Limited access to education and healthcare further exacerbates poverty, as many citizens lack the skills and resources necessary for economic advancement. Corruption and governance challenges also hinder effective development efforts, perpetuating the cycle of poverty across the nation. 5. Malawi. GDP per capita, $579. Malawi faces significant poverty challenges, with approximately 51% of its population living below the national poverty line. The country struggles financially due to its reliance on subsistence agriculture, which is vulnerable to climate change, droughts, and floods. Economic growth has been hampered by limited access to markets, inadequate infrastructure, and high unemployment rates. Additionally, Malawi's heavy dependence on a few cash crops, such as tobacco, makes its economy susceptible to global price fluctuations. Poor healthcare and education systems further exacerbate poverty, as many citizens lack the skills and resources needed for better opportunities. Corruption and governance issues also undermine development efforts, making it difficult for the country to leverage its potential for sustainable growth and improved living conditions. 4. Eritrea. GDP per capita, $566. Eritrea has one of the lowest GDP per capita figures in the world, estimated at around $566. The country's economy struggles due to a combination of factors, including prolonged military service requirements, restrictive economic policies, and limited access to international markets. Agriculture, which employs the majority of the population, is hampered by drought and poor infrastructure. Additionally, political repression stifles entrepreneurship and foreign investment, further hindering economic growth. The lack of diversification and reliance on subsistence farming contribute to widespread poverty, making it challenging for Eritreans to improve their living standards and overall economic conditions. 3. Madagascar. GDP per capita, $529. Madagascar is among the poorest countries in the world, with around 75% of its population living on less than $1.90 a day. The country's poverty stems from several factors, including political instability, frequent natural disasters, and a reliance on subsistence agriculture. Cyclones and droughts disrupt farming, which employs most of the population. Additionally, inadequate infrastructure and limited access to education and healthcare hinder economic development. Madagascar's rich biodiversity is under threat from deforestation and environmental degradation, further impacting livelihoods. Corruption and weak governance also impede effective resource management and investment, perpetuating poverty and limiting opportunities for improvement. 2. South Sudan. GDP per capita, $326. South Sudan is one of the poorest countries in the world, with over 80% of its population living below the poverty line. Its poverty is largely due to years of conflict, including a civil war that erupted in 2013, which has devastated infrastructure and disrupted economic activities. The economy heavily relies on oil exports, making it vulnerable to global price fluctuations. Frequent violence and insecurity displace communities, hindering agricultural production, which is vital for food security. Poor governance and corruption further exacerbate economic challenges, stifling investment and development. Limited access to education and healthcare services prevents citizens from improving their skills and livelihoods. Additionally, climate change impacts, such as flooding and drought, threaten agricultural outputs, deepening the cycle of poverty. 1. Burundi. GDP per capita, $322. Burundi is considered one of the poorest countries globally, with approximately 70% of its population living below the poverty line. The country faces chronic poverty due to a combination of factors, including political instability, ethnic conflict, and historical violence. Economic activities are primarily agricultural, But over-reliance on subsistence farming leaves many vulnerable to food insecurity. Limited access to education, healthcare, and basic services further hampers development. Additionally, high population density strains resources and exacerbates poverty.